wake of the Death Star disaster, Palpatine's response does not occur on Yavin itself. It becomes apparent through actions that reshape the war while maintaining the appearance of absolute control. From private dialogue to hidden superweapons, Canon and Legends sources uncover how Palpatine turned disaster into design without ever admitting defeat. The canon film A New Hope ends with Luke Skywalker firing proton torpedoes into the Death Star's exhaust port. He triggered the chain reaction that destroyed the station above Yavin 4. Grand Moff Tarkin remains aboard and dies in the explosion, removing a powerful regional commander. Meanwhile, Darth Vader escapes the blast in his damaged fighter and drifts into open space. Though Palpatine does not appear in the immediate aftermath of the battle, the Emperor remains on the throne, and the chain of command continues to function beneath him. Star Destroyers resume patrol routes across contested systems as governors continue administering their territories under Imperial law. The Legends novel Death Star describes how the loss of the station was a planning nightmare, as the Empire had funneled decades of resources and the brightest minds of the Tarkin Initiative into a single point of failure. To keep the core worlds from sliding into open revolt, the Emperor stepped up the military presence in the core. The Legends novel Allegiance shows how the Empire tried to change the story from a military defeat to a small-scale act of terror. As a result, the Imperial treasury was strained as Palpatine funded both the rebuilding of the fleet and a massive propaganda campaign meant to hide the hole in leadership left by Tarkin's death. The immediate political fallout of the Yavin disaster made it vital to take a swift, final stroke against what was left of the Old Republic. The Imperial Senate was finally ended, but the station's sudden destruction left the Emperor in a risky spot. He had removed the old system of government just as his main way to spread fear disappeared. Beyond the routine patrols of the Star Destroyers, a more personal hunt was beginning to take shape within the Emperor's inner circle. In the canon film The Empire Strikes Back, Sidious contacts Vader through hologram and identifies Luke Skywalker as the pilot responsible for the Death Star's destruction. He confirms Luke is the son of Anakin Skywalker, who could become a threat if trained in the Force. In the Empire Strikes Back novelization from Legends continuity, the Emperor's knowledge of Luke's parentage appears more deliberate. He tests Vader's awareness rather than discovering the information alongside him. Vader proposes turning Luke to the dark side, a possibility that the Emperor accepts. Issues 5 to 6 and 24 to 25 of the canon comic series Darth Vader begin in the immediate aftermath of Yavin and reveal that Sidious does more than pursue the rebel pilot. He quietly funds a parallel initiative under Dr. Silo to develop enhanced successors capable of replacing Vader. When he confronts Vader about recent failures, he states that he requires an apprentice who does not fail him. At the same time, Vader secretly hires Boba Fett to identify the pilot who destroyed the Death Star. When Fett reports the name Skywalker, Vader withholds that information during his next audience with the Emperor, but Sidious already knows. The exchange becomes a test rather than a revelation. The search for Luke is not only about neutralizing a threat, it is turned into an evaluation of whether Vader himself remains the optimal apprentice under the rule of two. Palpatine orders Luke be brought before him, shifting Imperial attention away from the Death Star disaster and towards the person who caused it. Imperial probes sweep remote systems until one locates Echo Base, the secret headquarters of the Rebel Alliance on the planet Hoth. The Emperor's search for the rebels has run parallel to the effort of securing Luke. A growing power in the Force with Skywalker lineage has developed into a larger opportunity, to which the anger at losing a giant battle station cannot compare. The canon film The Empire Strikes Back shows how Imperial forces move against the Rebel Alliance. After locating their base, Star Destroyers emerge from hyperspace to deploy ground assault units. General Veers, an Imperial Major General, advances AT-AT walkers against the headquarters' planetary shield, breaching Rebel defenses and forcing evacuation. Luke escapes the assault on his X-Wing just a few moments before Han Solo's Millennium Falcon takes off from the base. Vader pursues the Falcon, likely believing that his son was on it, or at the very least, that the ship contained the high-ranking Rebel leadership who would lead him to his true prize. Bounty hunters enter the pursuit, with Boba Fett identifying the Falcon's destination at Cloud City. The occupation of Cloud City becomes the mechanism through which Vader attempts to fulfill the Emperor's order to deliver Luke. Under Imperial pressure, Bespin shifts from a neutral outpost to a controlled environment designed to guarantee Luke's capture. Following the Emperor's requirement for bringing the boy alive, Vader effectively annexed the Tabana gas colony. He forced the Baron Administrator, Lando Calrissian, to betray his associates, Leia Organa and Han Solo. For Sidious, these individuals were of no political consequence. They function as leverage as Vader anticipates that Luke will respond if he took them, drawing him into confrontation. The most clinical aspect of the Emperor's orders involved the carbon freezing chamber. Because Sidious required Skywalker to be delivered to him alive and intact, Vader could not risk the shock of the freezing process without a preliminary trial. Han Solo was selected as the biological surrogate to test the chamber's survivability. The successful encasement of Solo in carbonite was a technical victory for the Empire. It confirmed that Skywalker could be successfully packaged for transit to the Emperor's throne room. With the test complete, the stage was set for the primary target's arrival. When Luke Skywalker descended into the heart of Cloud City, he was entering a domain defined by Sidious's influence. He encounters Vader and a duel breaks out between the two Skywalkers. During the fight, Vader uses a surgical lightsaber strike to sever Skywalker's right hand, crippling him and ending the contest on Vader's terms. The Sith Lord then tries to persuade his son to join him. Luke's choice to cast himself into the abyss rather than accept the dark side created a temporary stalemate. Though the young Skywalker escaped, the confrontation demonstrated his strength in the Force and forced him to confront his parentage. It could have been a structured manipulation by Sidious himself to weaken Luke's spirit when they finally faced each other. Effectively, Skywalker's narrow escape from the carbonite trap served as the final evidence Palpatine needed to justify a total restructuring of the Imperial hierarchy. After the first Death Star's destruction, Palpatine changes how he manages the Empire's most consequential military assets. Grand Moff Tarkin had commanded the original battle station with wide discretion over regional deployments and political enforcement. His authority extended across multiple sectors, and he exercised it without the Emperor's physical presence. When the station was destroyed above Yavin, the arrangement ended with him. By the time construction advances on the second Death Star above Endor, Palpatine does not assign comparable autonomy to another Grand Moff. Commander Jar Jar supervises engineering progress, yet his position differs sharply from Tarkin's. He answers upward through Darth Vader and remains subject to direct intervention. The Emperor relocates to the installation while construction continues. Officers report progress directly in his presence, and he demands accelerated completion. Decisions regarding deployment and engagement move through him rather than stopping at a regional intermediary. Fleet Command follows the same pattern. Admiral Piet directs naval forces positioned near Endor, but operational timing follows instructions issued from the Emperor's command level. Ships assemble in formation according to directives that come from the throne, and the fleet posture reflects centralized planning. Beyond the reach of the front line, the Emperor's shadow fell heavily over the two pillars of his domestic control. The Commission for the Preservation of the New Order, known as the Compnor, and Imperial Intelligence. For Sidious, these were never simple administrative bodies, but instruments of terror designed to monitor the galaxy, and more importantly, each other. Compnor functioned as a massive social engineering machine that used its most feared branch, the Imperial Security Bureau, or the ISB, to act as a secret police force. Their job was to inspect the loyalty of Imperial citizens and sniff out political trouble through their devotion to the throne. In contrast, Imperial Intelligence served as the Emperor's cold, practical scalpel. It was a traditional military spy agency focused on deep cover operations, signal intercepts, and the strategic movement of the Rebel Alliance. Following the disaster at Yavin, the energy between these two agencies shifted from quiet competition to a desperate, blood-soaked race for survival. The loss of the Death Star was a catastrophic failure of intelligence and security, leaving both organizations open to Palpatine's legendary wrath. To Sidious, the destruction of his ultimate weapon was a signal that his house was not in order. He did not merely demand a report, his actions proved he demanded a scapegoat. Both departments were immediately purged of incompetent officers. and their primary order was narrowed to identifying the pilot who dealt the Empire its greatest blow. The post-Yavin era saw the ISB and Imperial intelligence turn inward, weaponizing the hunt for Skywalker as a means to regain the Emperor's favor. While Imperial intelligence scoured tactical data and starship registries for the X-Wing's flight path, Commodore's agents began a reign of terror across the Mid-Rim, interrogating anyone who might have had contact with the Rebel cell. Both agencies became more aggressive, paranoid, and lethal. Ultimately, Palpatine's refusal to distribute authority meant that every aspect of the second station's construction and its eventual defense was consolidated under his direct gaze, leaving no room for the independent command that had defined the Tarkin era. Admiral Piet commanded the fleet from the bridge of the Executor, yet he held position when the Rebel Armada arrived. He waited because the Emperor's plan required the rebels to advance deeper into Imperial containment before the fleet closed fully. Star Destroyer captains followed that posture. They maintained formation instead of pursuing scattered targets. The Imperial fleet compressed rebel movement within a controlled battle space defined in advance. Inside the second Death Star, Commander Jerjerrod oversaw the battle station's construction under constant pressure. Darth Vader warned him that delay would not be tolerated and that the Emperor wouldn't be as forgiving. As a result, Jerjerrod pushed the station toward combat readiness despite incomplete exterior plating because the shield generator on the Forest Moon compensated for the gaps in the station's unfinished structure. Activating the super laser took priority above everything else. Because not one of these leaders could restructure the combat design once Palpatine established it, the Emperor was able to direct the entire space battle and his confrontation with Luke Skywalker from a single, unified location. The structure eliminated uncertainty. Imperial officers understood the sequence expected of them. As long as Palpatine remained alive, the fleet's posture and timing aligned under a single command source. But the battle above Endor would test what happened when that source disappeared. Consequently, the focus shifted from purging the ranks of the disloyal to reconstructing the very machinery of Imperial terror from the ground up. As for the engineers working on the second Death Star, they were tasked to integrate defensive measures that extend beyond the station's hull. A shield generator positioned on the Forest Moon of Endor projects a deflector shield that prevents direct approach. Starfighters cannot reach the surface while the shield remains active, which forces any attacking force to land troops on the moon and secure the bunker before attempting an orbital strike. Naval deployment complements this arrangement. Admiral Piet commands the Executor and the assembled Star Destroyers near Endor, positioning them beyond the moon rather than exposing them in a loose perimeter around the station. When enemy forces arrive, the fleet closes formation according to prearranged timing, compressing space for movement and limiting withdrawal routes. The technical details of the Endor project showed a defense-first mindset that the first station lacked. In the film Return of the Jedi of canon continuity, the tactical displays show an outside shield project, which was chosen to leave as much room as possible for the Mark II superlaser's power cells. The Legend sourcebook, The Death Star Technical Companion, notes that this new version featured a better focusing lens that could recharge much faster, and more importantly, a smarter targeting computer. Unlike the Yavin-era weapon, which needed several minutes to reset between shots, this system was built to turn with enough speed that it could in principle track moving large ships. The Legends novel Darksaber explains that this jump in weaponry was wrapped in a hull that used reinforced quadanium steel plating, making sure that once the station was fully done, no single torpedo could ever repeat the miracle of Yavin. At the same time, the Death Star superlaser becomes operational before the exterior superstructure can be completed. Palpatine authorizes combat readiness during construction, allowing the station to fire against capital ships even as structural work continues across unfinished sections of the hull. The weapon functions as an active battlefield system instead of a distant threat reserved for planetary demonstration. The Emperor does not abandon large-scale weapons. He restructures how they endure attack by embedding them within interlocking defense systems that operate across planetary, orbital, and command levels. With the second Death Star nearing readiness, Palpatine prepares it to serve as the site of a planned confrontation. Intelligence about the station's construction and the Emperor's presence above Endor reaches rebel leadership, including the belief that the battle station is not yet complete. Palpatine expects the Alliance to commit an assault modeled after the disaster in Yavin. Hidden behind this public display of orbital construction, the Empire's most radical experiments were quietly migrating into the voids of deep space. The loss of the Death Star forced a shift in the Emperor's strategy. Public attention stayed on the construction of a second station over Endor, but the real Imperial response was more varied. The Empire's research expanded beyond a single superweapon platform. Palpatine began a period of growth to make sure his power to destroy lived in many places across the galaxy. Legend sources showed a range of weapons and contingency programs that operated during his reign. In the book Jedi Search within Legends continuity, the Empire built small, specialized weapons, of which the Sun Crusher is the top example. The first Death Star was a giant target with an exhaust port that invited attack. Meanwhile, the Sun Crusher was the size of a fighter, but carried system-level destructive capability through resonance torpedoes. These specialized weapons were used to start a reaction in a star, which caused a supernova that could wipe out a whole star system. In the aspects of stealth, the Sun Crusher was a better choice. A pilot could not easily find a ship that was nearly invisible and covered in quantum crystalline armor. The Jedi Academy sourcebook, a Legends Guide, detailed the Empire's focus on keeping secrets. The Emperor saw that the Death Star was too easy to see. It gave the rebels a clear goal to fight. Research moved to the Maw installation, which was a hidden base inside a cluster of black holes near the planet Kessel and functioned as an anchor of the Emperor's strategy for secrecy. Stable paths into this area were known only to a few pilots. Most ships that tried to enter were pulled into the gravity wells and crushed. The natural wall kept the facility hidden from rebel spies and even most Imperial officers. In isolation, the Empire worked on many different weapons at once in that spot. The essential guide to vehicles and vessels from the Legends continuity showed how the Empire changed its perspective on war. Palpatine started to favor weapons that worked in different ways. The Galaxy Gun and the Eclipse Super Star Destroyer could hit targets from far away. These tools did not have the problems of a slow, moon-sized station, and expanding these tools kept the Empire safe from another big loss. Sidious made a network of weapons that could survive losing any one part, which meant the New Order would last even if one project failed. Although some of these weapons predate the Yavin disaster, many believe the research increased in speed and intensity after the first Death Star was destroyed. In Jedi Search, another Legends book, the Empire held the staff at the Maw separate from the rest of the galaxy. Scientists and soldiers lived there for years without leaving. Palpatine stopped all regular travel and talk between the base and the outside world. This created a bubble where work could continue even if the Empire lost a war elsewhere. Communication with the broader Empire was tightly restricted, contributing to delayed awareness of wider Imperial collapse. In the Jedi Academy sourcebook, Admiral Dalla led the defense of this zone. Tarkin gave her 4 Imperial-class Star Destroyers and told her to protect the scientists at all cost. She waited in the cluster for over a decade without new orders. Her seclusion meant the rebels could not find her or the weapons she guarded. This was a sharp change from the first Death Star, which was meant to be seen by everyone to cause fear. Despite the lethality of these shadow weapons, Sidious recognized that the ultimate safeguard of his new order resided in his own biological continuity. Palpatine focused on his own survival to ensure the Empire would never fall with his physical body. The loss at Yavin proved that even the most powerful tools could be destroyed. To fix this, he looked for ways to make his own life redundant, a move to guarantee that not a single attack could end his rule over the galaxy. In the Legends book Dark Empire, the Emperor used Sith sorcery and science to cheat death. He built a secret base on the planet Biss where he kept a supply of clone bodies. These clones were empty shells waiting for his spirit. When his old body failed or was killed, he used a power called essence transfer to move his mind into a new, young clone. This meant his leadership was a constant force that cannot be stopped by a pilot or a lucky shot. Palpatine did not wait for a crisis to prepare for his return. He saw his own form as just another asset that needed a backup. By building this infrastructure early, he insulated the throne from the risks of war. He turned the office of the Emperor into a system that could reboot itself as many times as needed. The Emperor's notes in Book of Sith, a Legends novel, reveal his view on biological limits. He saw the flesh as a cage that could be escaped through dark side knowledge. The death of the first Death Star taught him that anything built in the physical world could fall. His response was to move his true self beyond a single form. These preparations positioned his rule for continuation beyond a single body. So the Emperor combined his weapons, his secrets, and his life into one plan. This was not a simple reaction to the loss at Yavin. It was a change in how the Empire functioned as a whole. Sidious moved away from the idea of a single station that everyone could see. He chose to spread his power out so that no single rebel victory could stop his vision for the galaxy. By integrating the secrecy of the Maw with the biological contingencies on Biss, Palpatine ensured his insurance was both a scientific and a spiritual certainty, creating a shadow empire that could survive even the total collapse of his public military forces. In the Legends book Dark Empire sourcebook, this system-level change is shown through the hidden fleet on Biss. While the galaxy watched the war, the Emperor built ships that were more mobile and harder to track than the Death Star. He made sure that his weapons and his own spirit were spread across different worlds and bodies. This made the Empire a network rather than a single target. The throne was no longer tied to a person or a station, but to a hidden system of backups. Locked within this web of clones and superweapons, the Empire prepared to converge its strength for a final, decisive endgame above the Forest Moon. The strategic design Palpatine implemented was inherently rigid. Because the shield prevented penetration, the fleet did not form a close escort screen around the station, relying entirely on the moon's bunker to maintain the station's safety. In orbit, Star Destroyers positioned themselves beyond the moon and concentrated on containing the rebel fleet. Admiral Piet's ships focused on compression rather than proximity defense. Palpatine intended to immobilize the rebel armada and destroy its largest vessels with the super laser in sequence. The second Death Star super laser could fire more efficiently than the first, but it still required targeting alignment and recharge intervals. Imperial planning also depended on a discipline and timing. The Imperial fleet wasn't supposed to attack at maximum strength immediately because the Emperor intended a controlled escalation designed to break morale, not simply to destroy ships. The tempo required patience and coordination. Nevertheless, the super laser had its own shortcomings. It eliminated capital ships one at a time, but could not engage multiple targets simultaneously. In addition, it could not track agile starfighters moving through exposed surface structures. This reliance on the moon-based protection allowed the Empire to prioritize the super laser's lethality over the station's physical completion, a gamble that remained viable only as long as the deflector field remained intact. Rebel commandos disrupted that design when they destroyed the bunker on Endor. The deflector field collapsed instantly, and the Death Star's incomplete exterior became vulnerable at the moment the barrier disappeared. Soon, starfighters gained access to construction shafts and internal conduits that had never been intended for open combat conditions. The fleet's commitment to this encirclement strategy proved fatal. They cannot abandon their containment of the rebel cruisers to screen the station's surface without collapsing the Emperor's entire trap, as their rigid formation left no room for a tactical pivot. The super laser continued targeting large vessels, but it cannot address small craft attacking the interior. Turbo laser batteries attempted to intercept the starfighters, but those systems had not been arranged to defend against multiple attackers inside a superstructure with many holes. Imperial officers now face simultaneous demands: maintain pressure on rebel capital ships, protect the station's surface, and respond to internal attacks. The original arrangement had separated those responsibilities into a sequence of layers. The destruction of the shield collapsed that sequence into a single moment. The resulting detonation of the reactor core was not a failure of Imperial firepower, but a direct consequence of these internal breaches. The redesign of the second Death Star had removed the weakness that Luke Skywalker exploited at Yavin, but it was largely dependent on uninterrupted coordination between ground, orbit, and weapon sequencing. The concentration of authority at Endor extended beyond battlefield posture. Palpatine had not appointed a political heir after the first Death Star's destruction. He did not establish a regency or designate an emergency successor. Grand Moffs governed sectors, and admirals commanded fleets, but each derived legitimacy from the Emperor's rule. None of them possessed standing authority to issue galaxy-wide orders independent of the throne, even during a crisis. By relocating himself to the second Death Star, Palpatine placed fleet command, superweapon authorization, and Sith succession in one location. Darth Vader enforced his will, but he did not hold constitutional authority as head of state. Admiral Piet commanded ships, not the Empire. Intelligence services and regional governors reported upward to the Emperor. When Darth Vader killed Palpatine aboard the station, a mechanism had not been placed to reassign supreme authority at that moment. Piet retained tactical command, but he did not inherit sovereignty. Star Destroyer captains continued firing, but none could claim the Emperor's political mandate. The destruction of the station removed both the ruler and the physical command nexus at once. But while Palpatine had prepared for biological survival through the clones and essence transfer mentioned previously, those measures only addressed his mortality. They did not give him the ability to continue commanding on a battlefield once his physical form was interrupted. When Vader cast him into the reactor shaft, there was no signal informing the fleet of the Emperor's imminent restoration. Essence transfer required prepared vessels and control conditions. Even if his consciousness endured, it would not be able to transmit orders to Piet's bridge during active combat. Additionally, Vader's death during the same battle removed the only individual capable of imposing immediate authority through fear and a status as the Emperor's enforcer. With both Sith Lords gone, no figure possessed undisputed dominance over the Imperial hierarchy. As the Death Star exploded, the Empire's synchronized command cohesion fractured. While local admirals and governors moved to secure their own immediate territories, the Empire as a unified, singular machine effectively ceased to exist. Ultimately, the very centralization intended to fix the flaws of Yavin became the Empire's undoing at Endor. While Palpatine's redesign successfully prevented a repetition of a single-point failure like the Trench Assault, it left the Imperial machine unable to adapt once its singular, coordinating heart was silenced. If this breakdown of Palpatine's response to the Death Star changed how you see his grip on the galaxy, there are deeper histories to explore for the man who turned a catastrophic failure into a total redesign of Imperial power. You can witness the full scale of his rise and the ultimate endgame of his contingencies, or uncover the hidden weaknesses behind his absolute rule by tracing the stories of the only people he really feared.